Love overshadows the mind and a person loses touch with reality. This happened to me when I made my wife a goddess and did everything for her, and she eventually decided to betray me. My world collapsed. Psychiatrists suggest that feelings of anger and hatred can be harmful and must be eliminated for emotional well-being. While that may be true, how does one effectively release righteous anger and hatred? This was a question I struggled with for years in therapy, but ultimately found an answer through fate. My name is Alan Easton. I was just an average guy at the large high school I attended in a mid-sized American city, although many girls often described me as really cute and every nice. I was quite shy. I didn't go on many dates, though I did lose my virginity in my junior year. I was a member of the football team and had the size, strength, and speed to play as a starting linebacker, but I lacked the dedication and aggression required, which meant I didn't see much game time. My football coach was frustrated that he couldn't get the best out of me and often said, "You're too easygoing, Easton." My grades were always pretty good, but like with football, I wasn't overly committed to my studies, so I wasn't an academic standout. However, I did much better on standardized tests than my grades suggested, which often left my teachers puzzled as to why I didn't perform better in class. My physics teacher frequently told me, "You're too laid back." My mother passed away before I became a teenager, but my older sister, Carrie, was a strong role model, and my father was a great dad, so I had a solid family life. Even though Carrie is average-sized, if toughness were measured in size, she'd be 400 pounds. She's never been intimidated by anything. My father co-owned and worked as a service manager at a car dealership, so we were always financially stable. Like most kids in my class, I had planned to go to college after high school. But during my senior year, those plans changed when Janet Hatfield either mesmerized me or sunk her hooks into me, depending on how you look at it. Janet was the most attractive girl in my high school class. While her style and hair were usually suggestive, she had natural beauty that could make any guy swoon. Though her family could be described as trailer trash, she had managed to rise above her background, dressing well and speaking without sounding uneducated. Although she wasn't book smart, she was sharp, manipulative, and driven. Even though Janet had always been friendly since we met in 7th grade, I never thought she was within my reach, nor did I notice any romantic or intimacy interest from her. That all changed right after football season ended in my senior year, when she started paying a lot of attention to me. At first, I was stunned by her obvious desire for me, but because I was a real man, my second brain, whenever she was around, made me ask her out. After a couple of double dates at the movies, as well as after attending school dances and walking together, she really fell for me. Janet discreetly made inquiries about my sister and father's schedule, and when she found out that my sister had gone to college and my father worked until 6:30, she asked to come to my house after school one Wednesday. Ostensibly to do this, I had to help her with her math homework. In fact, the only thing she wanted to study was anatomy. Janet and I were kissing before that Wednesday, and I had a little argument, but nothing serious happened. However, 15 minutes after we arrived at my house, we were already lying on the bed. It happened to us. Not only was she great in bed, but she also had incredible activity. After our first time, we found ways to spend almost every day together while my house was empty. On weekends, we either went to a friend's house or, if the weather allowed, found a secluded place in the fresh air. For the rest of the school year, I was absolutely thrilled. My grades even improved, and my outlook on life became clearer, and my father noticed positive changes in my attitude to life and praised me for my newfound optimism. After 2 months of talking to Janet, she made it clear that she expected me to make a long-term commitment. Never shy about expressing her desires, she imagined how we would get married after graduation and start a family in a few years. Janet was determined to eventually become a good mother. She wanted to leave her dysfunctional family behind and give her future children the time, dedication, and love she had always dreamed of. My college plans have changed. Despite the advice of my sister Carrie, my father, and several friends, I decided immediately after graduation to find a job to feed us. You think with your small head, not your big one, my family and friends often told me, but since it was true, I didn't pay attention to them. A month before the wedding, my best friend asked, "Do you really think that after the wedding she will be satisfied only with you? I heard she got that $2,000 for your wedding by throwing a whole bachelor party." His words didn't take me long to think. Instead, I knocked him down with a punch. I was in love with Janet and refused to believe anything bad about her, and nothing could change that. Janet's family, being from a low-income family, could not afford a wedding. But thanks to the money that she and I earned from part-time work, the support of my father, and the $2,000 windfall that Janet allegedly received from a distant relative, which my friend hinted at, we were able to hold a small but pleasant ceremony, followed by a modest reception. When we returned from our love-filled, you understand in what plan, honeymoon, I got a job at a car dealership, which my father co-owned, and Janet got a job at a bank. For 2 years, everything appeared to be going well. Our intimacy life was definitely satisfying, possibly even better than during our pre-honeymoon days. Janet seemed happy, yet not entirely fulfilled. She began making more comments about material possessions she wished she could have, which our modest salaries couldn't afford. She often inquired whether my father, whom she regarded as wealthy due to his partial ownership of the car dealership, could offer us more financial support. When I broached the subject of starting a family, Janet was firm in her stance that she wouldn't consider it until we were in a much stronger financial position. She fully intended to leave her job and focus on caring for our children once we had them. We had been married for nearly 2 years when tragedy struck. My father suffered a heart attack at work. I was working as a salesman at a used car dealership when I heard a commotion in the service area. I rushed over just in time to see my father take his last breath moments before the paramedics arrived. I was heartbroken. He had been my pillar of strength since my mother passed away. Carrie had just graduated from college a month earlier and was living at home while searching for a job. She took our father's death hard as well, but she is far stronger than I am. Janet was supportive in the days leading up to the funeral and for a short time afterward. Although she didn't cry like Carrie and I did, she stayed by my side. However, once things began to calm down, she started to inquire more frequently about my father's will and the probate process. This bothered me, and I expressed my feelings to her, but she continued to press the issue. About 2 weeks after my father passed away, Janet, Carrie, myself, and an aunt and uncle from out of town attended the reading of the will. We were all taken aback to learn that Dad only owned 3% of the dealership and that there was a second mortgage on the house. It was clear that he had used the mortgage funds to acquire his share in the dealership. Ultimately, this meant that once his interest was sold to the majority owner at a price we couldn't negotiate, and after the mortgages on the house were settled, Carrie and I would each receive around $10,000. Despite the fact that Janet didn't express anything, I could see her anger boiling up. This put an end to her compassion and support. After that, she became a completely different person. I did everything I could to restore our relationship, but Janet remained distant and indifferent. Our intimacy had become rare, which was new to her. I kept quiet about it, not wanting to risk losing her completely. 3 months after the will was read, I returned to our rented apartment to find no sign of Janet, just a note resting on a stack of papers. "Hey, Alan, I want to have kids, but you can't support them the way I'd like. I'm moving on to better things. I withdrew more than half of the money from our meager bank account since I'm leaving you all the furniture. Don't try to contact me. Call my lawyer if you want anything. His name is on the divorce papers below this note. Good luck, Janet. And yes, beneath that note lay the divorce papers, citing irreconcilable differences. I guess that meant I wasn't the golden opportunity she had hoped for, making me disposable instead. I was simply the first step out of her difficult life. I attempted to reach out to her, but her lawyer insisted she had no desire to speak with me. I was devastated because I genuinely loved her. How could I have been blind to the fact that she never loved me? Luckily, Carrie still lived nearby and had a stable job. Since I could no longer afford the apartment without Janet's income, I sold the furniture and moved in with her temporarily. Carrie was the only thing that kept me from being completely miserable as I merely went through the motions of life for the next 6 weeks. Then I learned from some friends that Janet was now living with a wealthy real estate developer and was wearing maternity clothes. I was furious and called her lawyer again, demanding to see Janet. Actually, Mr. Easton, I was about to call you, Janet's attorney said. Janet is pregnant and plans to amend her divorce petition to request child support. I was once again taken aback. I had just signed the papers for an uncontested divorce that Janet had already orchestrated, including the division of our finances and no alimony for either side. That was the moment I transformed into a new person. No more Mr. Nice Guy, I thought as I unleashed my frustration on her attorney. Tell that cheating a girl of easy virtue that if she asks for child support, I will immediately demand a paternity test and withdraw my consent to the divorce. I know there are several methods to determine paternity before birth. If the child turns out to be mine, I'll cover the cost of the test. If not, she'll pay for it, and I'll file for divorce on the grounds of adultery, seeking alimony and a fair division of our few assets. Do you understand, you jerk? I yelled, slamming the phone down. I never received any official papers requesting child support because I was certain that the fetus wasn't mine. However, any feelings of love I had for Janet were now replaced by anger and hatred. When the divorce was finalized 2 months later, Carrie came home from work to find me drunk and rambling. Although I was in a haze, I had never seen her so furious. She unleashed a torrent of insults and basically told me to toughen up and be grateful that the A girl of easy virtue, as she now consistently called Janet, was out of my life. Carrie then shoved me into my bedroom, slammed the door, and shouted, "Don't come out until you're sober." I fell asleep, steeped in self-pity. When I woke up, I could smell bacon and eggs cooking. Carrie was in the kitchen. I called both our workplaces and told them we wouldn't be in until the afternoon, Carrie said, gesturing for me to sit as she placed a plate of delicious food in front of me. Why? I asked. Because we need to talk, and it'll probably take some time for me to drill into your thick skull what you need to do. As I mentioned, Carrie was tough. Within 2 hours, Carrie had persuaded me that I needed to move at least 500 miles away, that I should aim to get an associate's degree by attending community college at night, and that I had to put the past behind me. If I couldn't do that, I needed to seek professional help. In less than a month, I was on my way. I relocated to a booming construction area, got a job as a laborer, rented a small apartment, and enrolled in the local community college, starting night classes in 2 months. When my body finally adjusted to physical labor, I found that I genuinely enjoyed being in top shape, even more than when I was playing football. I also realized that my school teachers had good reasons to be disappointed with my academic performance. When I devoted myself to studying the same way I did at a local college, I found that I could succeed. Even though I took evening courses, I earned an associate degree in civil engineering as well as a bachelor's degree in business in just 2 academic years and 2 summers of study. I haven't dated many women. I had casual meetings about once a week, sometimes more often if I found someone. As a rule, these were one-night stands with women I met in bars. None of these experiences were in any way comparable to what I went through with Janet, so they didn't make me think about her at all. In fact, I was proud that I was able to get her out of my head. 30 months after moving, I got a senior position in the same construction company where I previously worked as a handyman. I have a strong relationship with the foreman, and through him with the owner. Both recognized my potential. My salary was now 4 times what I was getting when I first moved in, and during that time I managed to save a significant amount because the tuition fees at the local college were quite low. To celebrate my new job, I decided to treat myself next weekend and have some fun with the women. My friend recommended an agency where he vouched for me, and I chose Desiree, clearly a stage name. The cost was impressive, $900 for 3 hours, but I felt that I really deserved this pleasure. When Desiree came to my house on Saturday at 2000 hours, she was even more attractive in real life than in the photos. When Desiree entered the door, she closed it behind her. We exchanged glances, saying only, "Hi, I'm Desiree," and "Hi, I'm Alan." To my surprise, we felt completely comfortable. She broke the silence first, smiling broadly. My last 2 dates were old and overweight. After that, I deserve a handsome guy like you. I hope you've been saving money because I'm going to turn your world around, man. After Janet, Desiree was the most amazing woman I've ever seen. It was clear that Desiree was attracted to muscles. My work as a handyman and subsequent visits to the gym have toned up my muscles. Very soon we were in the bedroom, and I spent an unforgettable time in my life. And after the whole event, I snuggled up to her, which I hadn't done for a long time, and she fell asleep. I soon followed her example. She stirred, waking me up too. I looked at my watch. "Wow, Desiree," I said. "It's 2 o'clock in the morning. You've been here for 6 hours, and I've only paid for 3, she said. "If you promise not to inform the agency, I'll stay the night. There's no way I'm going home at this time." It was one of the easiest decisions I've ever made. "It's a deal," I said impulsively. Desiree started kissing me again, and that led to another session. When I woke up the next morning, I was shocked to find that I was still hugging Desiree. When I saw her sleeping, I felt desire again. I gently woke her up. She kissed me and said, "I hope you didn't waste your money." "More like 10 times more," I replied. "But there is a problem." "What's the problem?" "What is it?" she asked. "Our last meeting was without protection," I pointed out. "Oh no," she gasped. "This is only my 5th job, and I've already broken about 12 rules. If they find out, they'll fire me," she complained. "Don't be angry, but you don't have any diseases, do you?" I asked nervously. "I'm not." "And you?" she replied just as shyly. "How about we both go to the clinic on Monday and get tested? I'll pay the expenses." "It sounds great," she replied. "If we're both clean, I'll give you a free session. What do you say?" I smiled so wide it almost hurt. I was glad when Desiree showed up at the clinic on Monday. I wasn't sure if she would come. She gave me a quick kiss on the lips when she arrived, and after we passed the tests. The test results came immediately. We were free. It will take 5 or 6 days to get other results. She gave me an email address where I could contact her and report the results. Fortunately, we both had no illnesses. Since I haven't had a blood test in years, I also paid for it for both of us. "You must be the 2 healthiest people we've ever tested," the head of the clinic told me before emailing the results. I emailed Desiree the results. She immediately replied by email that she was free on Thursday evening and asked what time she should come to my house. Desiree and I had fun all Thursday night and Friday morning, my all-time record. On Friday morning, when Desiree and I were finishing dressing after breakfast, she kissed me goodbye. If we had met under different circumstances, we could have had a real relationship. She smiled. "I think you're right," I replied thoughtfully. "But 2 nights with you were worth 10 years of enjoying yourself with someone else. Thank you 1,000 times." She seemed to like it. She reached into her purse, took out her photo, and handed it to me. "In memory of me. I'm sorry, but if you need me again, you'll have to contact the agency. I work exclusively with them." "I understand," I said, kissing her one last time before we both walked out the door. Although the intimacy with Desiree was incredible, and only slightly inferior to what I spent with Janet, these 2 happy nights brought an unexpected problem. I found myself thinking about Janet again. I remembered how amazing my life was back then and how cruelly I was treated. Anger and hatred began to rise in me again. When my friends pointed out that I was acting like a jerk, I realized what the issue was. My sister Carrie suggested I needed to see a therapist. Seeing a therapist helped. It allowed me to reach a balance where I wasn't being a jerk to my friends and colleagues. After visiting the therapist 3 times in the first month, and then about once a month for a year, she shared her analysis. "Alan, you're harboring as much anger and hatred as any sane patient I've ever encountered. Unfortunately, conventional therapeutic methods won't help you release it. The anger and hate aren't good for your health, though you've managed to avoid any negative effects so far. Probably because you're in great physical shape," Dr. Bennett said, peering over her glasses. "So, is there no hope of getting rid of it?" I asked, disappointment clear in my voice. "It will take some major, unforeseen event to eliminate it. It won't be through therapy, but rather through a stroke of luck that you'll finally let go of what you feel toward Janet. I hope it happens soon." "Does this mean our sessions are over?" I asked, genuinely confused. "Continuing to see me monthly would be a waste of your money. You're still my patient, but I recommend we meet every 6 to 9 months, unless something urgent comes up. I truly want to see you heal fully, because you won't be able to have a fully committed relationship until you do. But at this point, neither traditional therapy nor medication will help." "Thank you for your honesty, Doctor." "Bennett," I said, standing and offering her my hand. "I'll see you in 6 to 9 months, unless I have a crisis," I added with a laugh. "Good luck," she said, smiling as she shook my hand. It had been 9 years since I left my hometown when I had a reason to return. At 29, I was still young, but I'd advanced far in my company and was now being considered to lead a new branch in my hometown. The only positive aspect of returning would be seeing Carrie again. I still had painful memories, and while the anger and hatred hadn't disappeared, I had learned to keep them under control. My boss insisted that I at least explore potential locations for a branch in my hometown, even if I ultimately declined to establish it myself. Since this would give me a chance to see Carrie on her home turf. Her wedding 6 years ago was a destination wedding, and she and her husband Jeff had been visiting me or meeting up at vacation spots every 6 months or so. And since I wasn't committing to move back, I agreed. When I spoke to Carrie, she insisted on giving me an update about Janet so I wouldn't be caught off guard. When the real estate market crashed, Janet had dumped the real estate guy in the exact same way she'd dumped me, right down to the detail that she was pregnant with her second daughter when she left him for a hedge fund manager. She was now Janet Jenkins, surprisingly still married to her third husband, hedge fund manager Kevin Jenkins, and was a stay-at-home mom with 2 daughters, aged 6 and 8. The older daughter had been adopted by Kevin, and the younger one was his biological child. I was actually relieved, Carrie told me, for 2 reasons. First, I wasn't the only one Janet had manipulated, and second, I had resented the real estate guy for stealing her from me. I rented a car at the airport, which felt odd because so many things had changed there in the last 9 years, and set out to check out some properties. I planned to stay with Carrie and her husband Jeff at their house until I found something suitable. I had only driven about 20 miles and was still 5 miles from the first property on my list when I got a flat tire. I called the rental company, but they said it would take an hour to send help, so I decided to change the tire myself. I forgot to pack up the lug wrench with the rest of the tools, so I tossed it onto the floor in front of the passenger seat and continued on my way. I was stopped at a red light when the children were leaving a private school. I noticed 3 charming girls crossing the street, about to get into a limo. The driver was holding the back door for them when the chaos suddenly started. The black SUV accelerated. 3 men jumped out of it, neutralized the driver, and grabbed the girls. Before the light turned green, the men had already pushed the girls into the back seat of the SUV. Without hesitation, I ran a red light, drove around another car at an intersection, and crashed into an SUV. I grabbed the wrench, unbuckled my seatbelt, jumped out of the car, and ran to the stationary SUV. One of the men, armed with a pistol, got out of the back passenger seat but lost his balance. Before he could aim properly, I caught up with him and knocked him to the ground. The third thug came out from the driver's side from the back seat, grabbing one of the girls. He ordered me to drop my weapon. I met his gaze, trying to keep my voice steady but loud enough to be heard. "If you let the girl go, I'll let you go, but you're not leaving here with her. If you hurt her, I can't vouch for myself. You have 10 seconds to make a decision, and then I'll come get you." With these words, I raised my left hand, looked at my watch, and started counting. 1, 2. When I counted to 6, he let go of the crying girl and started running. I threw a wrench at him and felt like Daniel Boone when I saw him fall to the ground. I went over, put my knee on his back, and shouted to the stunned people across the street to dial 911. Obviously, someone had already called because the cops arrived just 2 minutes later. When the police arrived, 2 male teachers from the school had already subdued the driver of the SUV. Meanwhile, 5 or 6 parents and teachers were comforting the 3 terrified girls. The police quickly arrested all 3 bandits. While they were being loaded into ambulances, I was receiving medical attention for an injury to my left arm, which I did not even notice. The limo driver was also treated at the scene. When the ambulances drove away, and I was giving evidence to a police lieutenant while a paramedic was treating my wound, I suddenly heard a woman, sobbing uncontrollably, rushing to the 2 girls who had been abducted. I didn't immediately understand when I recognized her. It was Janet. Janet noticed me. After a moment of shock, she rushed to me shouting, "You're a jerk, Alan. I know you have something to do with this. You kidnapped them to get back at me." Before I or the police could react, she pounced on me and hit me twice on the head with her purse until I managed to dodge her, and then a policeman intervened. "This guy saved your children's lives, ma'am," the policeman shouted, restraining her. She ignored him and continued to shower me with insults. In the distance, I noticed how the officer finally calmed her down, just as I was getting into the lieutenant's car to continue my testimony at the police station. After watching numerous cop shows on TV, I knew enough to demand that my statement be recorded on video when I arrived at the station. The primary question from the officers was how I managed to get the lug wrench so quickly. Since my rental car was already in their impound lot, they could easily confirm my account. Following my statement, they requested that I stay a bit longer, which I agreed to, provided I could call my sister. Carrie was shocked and agreed to come pick me up. I informed the officers, "My sister will arrive in half an hour, so I'll leave then." "We need you to stay a little longer," the lieutenant insisted. "I won't stay unless you arrest me, and if you do, you'll be named in my false arrest lawsuit," I retorted. He noticed my shift from being cooperative to confrontational and decided not to press further. "However, there's one more thing I need," I added. "I want to file an arrest warrant for the woman who hit me with her purse." "She was simply a distressed mother," the lieutenant responded. "She assaulted me and I'm pressing charges. Either provide me with a form to complete, or I'll go to the press tomorrow morning and ask the commissioner why you refused to take action against someone who assaulted me." By the time I completed the form, Carrie was already waiting for me. I retrieved my suitcase from the police, they had clearly gone through it, and left after receiving a long hug from Carrie. Naturally, the story about the thwarted kidnapping at the private school was the top story on the TV news that evening, and made the front page of the newspaper the following day. Fortunately, the press couldn't track me down since Carrie and I have different last names. However, it seemed that some reporter managed to speak with everyone else involved in the situation. The following day, I visited a lawyer to discuss the possibility of suing Janet for slander and assault and to see if he could ensure that the police arrested her for assault. He was eager to assist his new, high-profile client. I went about my day as usual. The rescue was the talk of the town, but no one recognized me, so I stayed silent. However, things took a turn that evening. One TV station acted quickly, obtaining a copy of the surveillance footage from a business and a street camera, although it seemed that the school wouldn't provide their copy, which was the clearest one. They enlarged a photo of me being treated for my injury and praised my performance and bravery extensively. That day, it was difficult to carry on with regular business because people recognized me and were eager to discuss the incident. A reporter learned where I was, and soon I was surrounded by them as well. I gave brief, curt interviews, downplaying my involvement. Somehow, Janet managed to get my sister's phone number. I didn't think she knew my sister's married name. She called my sister's house to apologize for overreacting, thank me for saving her kids, and requested to meet. At least that's what Carrie relayed from Janet's voicemail. I never listened to it. I told Carrie to erase it and instructed her that if Janet called again, she should tell her to get lost. The next day, before heading back to my office, I met with my new attorney once more. He had prepared all the documents for my lawsuit against Janet for slander and assault. I reviewed the papers, signed them, and provided him with a retainer. My lawyer informed me that he had spoken with the prosecutor's office, reminded them of the case's high profile, and inquired about the possibility of arresting and prosecuting Janet. They indicated that they were considering it and would follow up with him. As I flew home, I felt a strong sense of satisfaction. I'm somewhat ashamed to admit that my focus was more on the prospect of suing Janet and the emotional debt she now owed me than on saving the 3 little girls. My anger and resentment finally found a constructive outlet. Upon returning to my office, I shared news of 2 prime locations I had discovered with my boss, who was quite pleased. The buzz about my adventures was also widespread in my city, and everyone congratulated me. On my first day back, my boss, the company owner, and his wife treated me to lunch at the finest restaurant in town, where I once again realized I had become a minor celebrity. I was reveling in my 15 minutes of fame. After lunch, when I returned to my office, I received a phone call. "Mr. Easton, this is Bradley Simmons," said the distinguished voice on the other end. Bradley Simmons is a billionaire entrepreneur, regarded as one of the 25 wealthiest men in America. "Yeah, and I suppose you're calling me from the White House with the Pope and the Dalai Lama by your side," I joked. "No, really. Who is this?" "I apologize for the unexpected call, Mr. Easton, but one of the little girls you rescued earlier this week is my granddaughter, Elsie. I wanted to thank you and share some good news." "If this is a prank, it's a pretty cruel one," I replied. "I assure you it's not a joke, and I'll provide you with a way to confirm it after our conversation." As he spoke, I became convinced that he was indeed Bradley Simmons. I told him to call me Alan, and he requested that I call him Brad. He expressed genuine gratitude, mentioning that his 8-year-old granddaughter, Elsie, was the light of his life. He feared that whether he paid the ransom or not, she would likely be killed since the kidnappers had a history filled with violent crimes. He wrapped up our phone conversation with some wonderful news. "Alan, I owe you a huge favor, and I always repay my debts. If you ever need my assistance, whether it's a job, a recommendation, or even a trip to Europe, just let me know, and it's yours. My secretary will send you my personal cell phone number. I only ask that you keep it private." "Wow, that's really generous of you, Brad. I promise to keep it safe," I responded. "Just one more thing. Don't worry about the rental car you used to save my granddaughter's life. That has already been taken care of. I was convinced that I would have to pay for the rental car I had totaled, or at the very least, my insurance rates would increase even if I only had to cover the deductible. I called the number for the rental car company that Brad had given me, and I was stunned to discover it was the president's office. After providing her secretary with my name, I was directly connected to her. "Hello, Mr. Easton. This is Catherine Timms, the president of XYZ. I want to personally express how proud we are of your actions, and for the first time I can remember, we are actually pleased that one of our cars was totaled. I assure you that you will not be charged for any damages to the vehicle, and we have refunded your rental fee to your credit card." I was taken aback, and after fumbling through a few thank yous, my curiosity got the better of me. "I assume that Mr. Bradley Simmons had a hand in this," I ventured. Timms chuckled. "Actually, Brad's holding company owns XYZ, and he brought your situation to my attention. Of course, I had seen the footage of your heroics on TV. However, I can assure you that even if you hadn't saved Brad's granddaughter, we would have handled it the same way." "Well, thank you," I responded. "As I mentioned, we're proud that you were able to use one of our vehicles for your heroic act. Plus, our marketing department has been telling everyone who will listen that it was one of our cars," she continued, laughing even more. "We'll likely gain 100-fold in free publicity compared to the cost of the car." I was having a fantastic week. Carrie informed me that Janet was constantly calling her and sending letters, which Carrie simply returned unopened. Eventually, Carrie decided to answer the phone instead of letting it go to voicemail. Once she confirmed the caller ID was accurate, she shouted into the phone, "Stop contacting me, you fucking biatch. Alan will never ever contact you except through his lawyers. If you call again, I'll have his attorneys file a harassment lawsuit against you." It seemed that Janet didn't attempt to reach out to her after that. However, she did repeatedly request to meet with my attorney, who informed her that everything would be handled through formal proceedings. While I was enjoying putting pressure on Janet, it was becoming costly. I realized I had to prepare for a deposition where I had filed my suit, and my attorney explained that Janet had the right to attend the deposition, although he could make arrangements to ensure that I wouldn't have to speak with her. While I was trying to decide on a suitable date for my deposition, my phone rang. "It's Mr. Simmons," my secretary said excitedly. "Wow," I thought to myself, trying to compose myself. "Hi, Brad." "How are you?" I asked. "I'm doing great, Alan. How about you?" "Things are good, except for the ongoing litigation with my ex-wife. Even that's not too bad since I'm putting some pressure on her, but the costs are really adding up. I need to set a date for a deposition back there," I mentioned. "Is that so?" Brad replied, and I felt a wave of embarrassment wash over me. "Sorry, Brad, I didn't mean to vent. Your call came at just the right moment while I was reviewing my calendar," I explained. "Well, it seems we have a bit of serendipity, Alan. I was calling to let you know that the mayor wants to hold a ceremony to award you City Hero of the Year. You could plan it around your deposition and get reimbursed for your travel," Brad said with enthusiasm. "I'm not really into the spotlight, Brad. I've turned down countless interview requests, even from 60 Minutes. But still, I can't believe the city would cover my travel expenses." "Ha, good point," Brad chuckled. "I need to be honest with you. I'll cover your travel expenses because the ceremony means a lot to my granddaughter. Elsie is adamant about wanting to publicly thank you, and I believe it will benefit her growth and help her heal from her trauma. So I'm really urging you to come." "Wow, Brad. I really don't want to let you down, but I'm feeling a bit anxious about it. I really don't like being the center of attention. It would make me quite uncomfortable." Brad interrupted. "I get it, Alan, but here's the deal. If you come, not only will I pay your travel costs, but I'll also cover your attorney fees for the lawsuit against your ex-wife, and I'll owe you double. Trust me, having me owe you double will be very advantageous for you." I paused to think, probably longer than I realized, prompting Brad to ask, "Are you there, Alan?" "Sorry, Brad. I was just reflecting. You've actually made it impossible to say no, but you really don't need to cover my attorney fees. I'll attend the ceremony." "Fantastic, but I insist on covering your attorney fees. I'm outraged by how she treated you. I had no idea you filed a lawsuit, but now that I do, I want to help. My secretary will provide you with the details to share with your attorney and suggest some dates for the ceremony." "I'm looking forward to meeting you, Alan," Brad said. "Thanks, Brad," I replied with enthusiasm. Things were finally looking up. My attorney was the most thrilled person I had ever spoken to when he called to inform me that Brad Simmons was covering the costs. His personal lawyer advised me to go all out and not hold back as long as it stays within my ethical limits. I could tell my attorney was looking forward to seeing his billings double, confident he would get paid. I had my deposition at my attorney's office the day before the ceremony. As expected, Janet Jenkins was present. She attempted to engage with me multiple times, and each time I responded in a very mature way. I covered my ears while my attorney requested that she not speak to me. Eventually, my attorney warned the opposing counsel, "If your client tries to talk to mine again, I will end the deposition, and you can explain to the judge why it should proceed under these conditions." Janet left the room in tears, and I couldn't help but smile. The ceremony was awkward, but it was also thrilling to finally meet Brad in person. His granddaughter Elsie's thank you speech was one of the most delightful things I have ever witnessed, bringing a tear to my eye. It was perfect. Until the very end. After the ceremony, I mingled with several people, award in hand. Just as I finished speaking with the mayor and was about to leave, I turned around and found Janet, her second husband, and her current husband, Kevin Jenkins, standing behind me, completely unaware of their presence. I was taken aback when Janet said, "Alan, I really want to thank you for saving my girls and—" I interrupted her. Facing her, I lowered my voice and replied, "Screw you, Janet. If I had known they were your kids, I never would have saved them." And then I turned to walk away. I felt triumphant for a moment, as it was one of the most hurtful things I could have said. However, that feeling quickly faded when I noticed her daughters standing nearby, their faces a mix of shock and sadness, clearly having overheard my remark. Suddenly, I felt awful. I was deeply troubled by the fact that two innocent little girls, aged between 6 and 9, overheard my untrue comment, which was solely meant to cause as much pain as possible to Janet. 4 days later, I was still preoccupied with it, and pondering how to make amends when my attorney called. "I have 2 updates: good news regarding a court ruling and a settlement proposal from the opposing counsel," he said. "Go ahead," I replied. "The judge has decided that we can include evidence of how Janet left you while pregnant with another man's child in our damages presentation. This is a significant advantage and puts them in a tough spot." "That's great," I responded. "Regarding the settlement proposal, it seems to have been influenced by both the court's ruling on evidence and your firm refusal to communicate with Janet or her subsequent husbands. They've offered $500,000 to settle the case, with no admission of liability, on the condition that you drop the pending criminal assault complaint against Janet. You should seriously consider accepting it. You're unlikely to receive that much at trial, even with punitive damages," my attorney explained. My mind began to race. "I have a counter-proposal," I stated. "I'll agree to the amount and withdraw the criminal complaint, but Janet must acknowledge that her remarks were slanderous and false. I'm not concerned about the admission of assault. However, what matters most is that I get a 15-minute private meeting with her 2 daughters at the courthouse. Neither she nor her second or third husbands can be present, only their attorney, you, me, and the 2 girls. The adults on their side must also agree not to attempt any communication with me. Additionally, they must consent to allow you to speak with the girls privately for 10 minutes each year until they reach 18. If they refuse any of these conditions or question my motives for wanting to meet the girls, we go to trial. I'm not sure what you're thinking, but all right. You're in charge. He chuckled. 2 hours later, my attorney called me back. They agreed to everything and suggested a date for the meeting. Once I confirmed the meeting date, I called Brad's cell phone. Brad, this is Alan Easton. You mentioned I could reach you on your cell, so here I am. I hope I'm not interrupting you. Alan, I owe you big time, so even if you were interrupting, which you're not, I'd still want to chat. By the way, my granddaughter had the most fulfilling experience at the ceremony, and she was quite moved by the tears in your eyes. You softy. Thanks, Brad. She's a treasure. I laughed. I explained to Brad my intentions for the meeting with Janet's daughters, which required him to advance me $400,000, which I would repay once I received payment from Janet. Wow, you're a better man than I thought, and I already held you in high esteem, Brad said sincerely. Of course, I'll do it. My assistant will transfer the money to your attorney in trust. Have him prepare the documents. Thanks, Brad. We're even now, I replied. That doesn't even count as one of the two I owe you, and you better collect on both, or I'll have to do something to embarrass you. He chuckled. Janet and Kevin Jenkins stood nervously as her lawyer guided her two daughters, 9-year-old Elizabeth and 7-year-old Jamie, into an empty jury room at the courthouse. I greeted the girls with a warm smile, shook their hands, and performed a magic trick I had been practicing for a week to help them feel more at ease. Then I explained the reason for our meeting. I wanted to tell both of you directly how proud I am to have been able to assist you during that ordeal with the kidnappers. I know you heard me say something to your mother that wasn't true, and I wanted to correct that, I said, sitting down and gently holding one of their hands in mine. You didn't really mean it when you said you wouldn't have saved us if you knew who our mom was, Elizabeth asked, her smile beginning to emerge. No, I didn't mean that at all. You two are precious and wonderful children, and no matter who your parents are, I would be proud to help you any time. I have some issues with your mom due to things that happened in the past, and I said that to hurt her because of how she hurt me before, but I would have given my life to save both of you. Why don't you like our mom? Elizabeth inquired, pushing her beautiful strawberry blonde hair aside to reveal one of her sparkling blue eyes. That's not something you need to worry about. Just know that it has nothing to do with either of you, I replied as warmly as I could. Following that, the conversation flowed effortlessly. Time flew by, and when the 15 minutes were up, I asked Janet's attorney for an additional 5 minutes. He agreed. Girls, to express how delighted I am to have had the privilege of helping you, I have a gift for each of you. Mr. Ames, my attorney here, has set aside enough money in trust to cover your college tuition regardless of what happens with your parents. If you ever need funds related to college, simply reach out to him, and he will assist you. Here are 2 of his business cards. Mr. Ames will contact you both on this date every year until you graduate to check if you need any of the funds and to see how you're doing. My friend Elsie mentioned that college is very expensive, Elizabeth said, her eyes wide. Yes, it certainly is, which is why I'm providing Mr. Ames with the funds to ensure that you both can attend, no matter what else might occur. The girls hugged me and gave me a kiss on the cheek. I noticed a tear in Elizabeth's eye. One last thing, here are matching rings for us. I've already given one to your friend Elsie. These rings symbolize the everlasting bond we share because I helped you, and you, in turn, have brought me more joy than I ever imagined by allowing me the honor of assisting you, I said. With that, I placed a multicolored plastic ring on the ring finger of each girl's right hand, even though it was too large for them, and slipped another identical ring onto the pinky finger of my right hand. They smiled, hugged me once more, and left the room. Janet's attorney was taken aback. He nearly toppled over when he glanced at his copy of the trust agreements, which designated $200,000 for each girl. This amount was set to double in 10 years and would be held in trust for their education, with any remaining funds returned to them upon their college graduation. I was feeling quite emotional, so my attorney and I stayed in the jury room for another 5 minutes before leaving. As we walked out, it was clear that Janet's attorney had filled her and her husband in on what had transpired. Janet was sobbing and appeared close to fainting. For any reasonable person, this would suggest she was overwhelmed by my generosity, realizing that despite my feelings towards her, I had a deep affection for her children. Whether that was truly how she felt, I'll never know, as I simply walked away, giving a small wave to Elizabeth and Jamie. Shortly after my 42nd birthday, I returned to my hometown. In the 12 years since I settled my lawsuit with Janet, I had seen my therapist once a year, and she concluded that my feelings of hate and anger towards Janet were completely under control. However, I still hadn't entered into a serious relationship, which concerned my psychiatrist, though she didn't have any solutions apart from the possibility of a fortuitous event that might help me overcome that final barrier. I had been working on special projects for Brad Simmons for the past 11 years and was close to becoming wealthy myself. Brad now insisted that I establish a business for him in my hometown. Since my previous anxieties about seeing Janet had faded over the last 12 years, I was actually looking forward to it because it would allow me to spend more time with Carrie, Jeff, and my beloved niece and nephew, who were 11 and 9 years old. To help set up the new business, I hired a public relations firm. The person they assigned to me was a 21-year-old named Betsy Destino. Initially, I was taken aback that they would assign someone so young and fresh out of college to my account, but the president of the firm assured me she was the best fit for the job and promised to replace her if I wasn't satisfied. When I first encountered Betsy, I was completely captivated. At first, she seemed familiar, but I quickly realized I had never seen anyone like her before. She had to be the most beautiful woman I had ever laid eyes on, even more so than Janet and Desiree. With her long, flowing reddish blonde hair, sparkling azure eyes, upturned nose, full lips, and a body straight out of the Sports Illustrated swimsuit edition, she embodied an upbeat and friendly spirit. Betsy was also a dedicated worker with brilliant ideas. I found myself spending more time with her than I probably should have, completely enchanted by her presence, which ultimately helped the company get off to a fantastic start. I often wondered, why couldn't I have met someone like her when I was 21? The way she would touch my arm when she laughed nearly drove me wild. When the 3-month contract with the PR firm came to an end, I felt a wave of sadness. I would have loved to keep her on, but her company had other plans for her, and I really couldn't justify it if Brad ever questioned me about it. As Betsy and I were saying our goodbyes in my office, she completely caught me off guard. "Now that I'm no longer your employee, how about you take me out for dinner and a play?" she said, gazing into my eyes with an intensity that felt almost serpentine. Well, I stumbled over my words, not really getting the chance to respond before she pulled me into a tight hug and whispered in my ear, "Call me or I'll stalk you." As she pulled away, she slipped a piece of paper with her cell number into my hand. I couldn't help but notice her hips sway as she left, and I quickly tried to hide my arousal just as my secretary walked into the office. Later that night, I invited myself over to Carrie's house for dinner. The kids were thrilled to see me and the gifts I brought along. "You're spoiling them," Carrie admonished as they dashed around the house, proudly displaying their latest treasures from Uncle Al. After dinner, while Jeff was putting the kids to bed, Carrie remarked, "What's going on? I can tell by that look on your face that you want to talk." "Yeah, I do," I replied simply, as we strolled arm in arm into the living room. Carrie was the only person I completely trusted to be honest with me. Our love was so profound that nothing could shake it, allowing us to speak openly. I started by telling her about Betsy, even showing her a photo. "I think I've seen this woman before, but I can't quite place her," she said, looking puzzled. "She's definitely a 10 in terms of looks." "And her personality matches her appearance," I added. I then shared what Betsy had said to me and showed her the piece of paper with Betsy's phone number and a little heart drawn next to it. "Carrie, be honest. Is there a chance this woman might find me attractive? I'm over 20 years older than she is, and she could probably have any straight guy she wanted." Carrie gazed at me intently before responding seriously. "Alan, you're good-looking, in great shape, and financially stable. It's possible. However, the chances are still below 50-50. But it's worth a shot. Honestly, I'd say you'd be a fool not to try. Just don't be overconfident and keep your expectations realistic." I smiled, stood up, pulled Carrie to her feet, and gave her a big hug and kiss. "Carrie, you're the best. Thanks for dinner. I need to make a personal call." I stepped out the front door, hearing Carrie's laughter as she closed it behind me. When I went out with Betsy that Saturday night, I was extremely nervous, but within 5 minutes her smile, sparkling eyes, playful conversation, and touches put me at ease. Lots of touches. We enjoyed a wonderful dinner, and our conversation was casual, as if we were old friends. She held my hand for most of the performance. As we were driving home, she put her hand on my hip and asked, "Would we like to have a drink at your apartment for the night?" Her gaze could melt steel. As soon as we arrived at my apartment, she threw her shawl on a chair in the living room and leaned towards me, grabbing my tie. "If you don't refuse me, we'll have fun at least 3 times after that, and then we'll see what happens next." My knees were weak, the excitement was palpable, and I was sweating. "If you're interested, we need to understand each other clearly. I'm not going to limit myself to you. Eventually, I'll want to find someone my own age, get married, and start a family. No matter what, once I get engaged, we won't have any more fun, but I hope we can still be friends. Do you agree?" she asked rhetorically. I nodded when the lightning almost burst in my excitement. She started kissing me. We had a great time. By noon the next day, we had had fun 4 times in 24 hours, just the second time in my life, the first time with Desiree. When we finally sat at my kitchen table and enjoyed the quick lunch I had prepared, it seemed to me that I was living more in a dream than in reality. It seemed even more surreal when she spoke with her usual directness. "Hi, Alan. I thought that my 4 trial meetings with you would take place within a few weeks, and not just in one night and morning. So tell me, was it pleasant enough for you to be with me to keep going like this?" I chuckled. "I'm sorry, Betsy, but that's probably the stupidest question I've ever been asked." "Let me share my thoughts," I said, pinching her lightly. "Why was that?" She giggled. "I just wanted to make sure you were real and not some kind of illusion," I joked, and then continued. "Let's see. I just had the best intimacy of my life with the most beautiful woman I've ever seen. Do I want to keep having fun with her?" This is a really difficult question," I said, pretending to be deep in thought, stroking my chin. Betsy stood up, laughing. "I'm getting dressed. If you don't call me tomorrow, I'll take that as a no." She laughed even louder. The next 14 months were the happiest of my life. Although Betsy reminded me from time to time that we weren't the only people of our kind, and that our relationship would end if she ever got engaged, she was the most loving and vibrant woman I've ever known. She felt like a goddess. Betsy usually went on dates on Fridays and Saturdays, and sometimes went out of town for the weekend. When we were close, usually every Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday evening, we rarely discussed her other partners. Sometimes we met in her apartment, and sometimes in my apartment. Our time together was more than just intimacy. We enjoyed dinners, theatrical performances, charity events, and even went for 3 days to one of the most expensive resorts in the East. I was so pleased with myself and so happy with life that I started dating too. I met several women, and I enjoyed spending time with them and being close. I've never compared them to Betsy, because that would be unfair to them. After one particularly memorable night spent together on Thursday, Betsy sat up in bed and said, "We need to talk." "All right," I said, taking her hands in mine and noticing a ring on her right pinky for the first time, though it was too dark to see its design. "You remember me mentioning Eric? And you met him once, right?" she asked. I recalled running into Betsy and a handsome 6'4" blonde guy she introduced as Eric one Saturday night at a restaurant while I was on a date. Betsy had brought him up occasionally. "Of course," I replied, sensing where this was headed. "Well, he proposed to me. I'm in love with him and plan to say yes on Monday," she said, gazing into my eyes. "If you love him, why haven't you said yes already?" I asked, feeling a lump form in my throat, because when I first started our intimacy relationship, I told you that once I got engaged, it would end. I wanted one last fling with you. I want to take you to a resort this weekend, my treat, to say a proper goodbye." "Wow," I responded, completely taken aback. "That sounds amazing, but you don't have to pay." I began, but she cut me off. "I will pay. I have more than enough money. But first, I need to fully disclose something to you, so please don't say yes just yet," she said. Betsy switched on the lamp on the bedside table and held her pinky right beside my face. The lamp's glow revealed a plastic ring with multiple colors. My thoughts were in chaos as she said, "I'm Elizabeth Jenkins. Destino is the Italian word for destiny, and it's just an alias I use for my work." I had never been so speechless in my life. My emotions overwhelmed my mind and body, leaving me wide-eyed and gaping at her. Sensing my inability to respond, she pressed on. "I never had the chance to properly thank you for saving my life and my sister Jamie's. I became consumed by what you did, not only saving me but also providing me with a $200,000 trust fund. I had to learn more about you." I saw tears welling in her eyes, and my own felt damp as well. "When I was a teenager, I managed to get a copy of your deposition from your lawyer after making him swear he wouldn't tell you. I was shocked and embarrassed by how my mother treated you. It was then I vowed never to be like her. Although she truly loves me and has dedicated everything to raising my sister and me, I could never see her the same way after that," Betsy Elizabeth continued. In a slightly trembling voice, Betsy said, "I was determined to make up for the way you were treated, which is why I decided to make love to you 4 times. I discovered that you are an amazing person and lover, and I continued this not only for my own pleasure, but also as a way to express my gratitude. I have tried to clarify our long-term future." I finally managed to speak. "You're incredible," was all I could whisper through the tears that were now flowing freely as I held her tightly to me. After a moment, Betsy pushed me away, wiped her tears, and then asked, "Does this mean you'll spend the weekend with me and let me use some of the more than $300,000 left from the trust you established for me?" "You've given me the greatest gift anyone could offer," I replied, regaining my composure. "You shared so much of yourself that you transformed my life. I no longer carry hate and anger in my heart, only love and peace. It would be an honor to spend one last weekend with the most beautiful person, inside and out, in the world." That Friday, Saturday, and Sunday morning were the most bittersweet days of my life. We didn't have intimacy. We only made love. Although I had to admit that I was in love with Betsy, I didn't appear melancholy because I was so happy and grateful for her. True to her word, Betsy never had any intimacy contact with me again after accepting Eric's marriage proposal, but we remained very good friends. She even introduced me to my fiancée, Grace, a widow 2 years younger than me and the executive director of a charity that Betsy worked with. I felt no need to mention anything about Janet to Grace, since that chapter of my life was closed. Grace and I attended Betsy and Eric's wedding 9 months after Betsy accepted the proposal. I knew I would see Janet there, but without any hate or anger, I felt no apprehension. The ceremony was beautiful, the reception was lively, and I was filled with joy for Betsy. At the reception, I noticed that Janet was deliberately avoiding me. I could tell she believed I would lash out at her again if she attempted to talk to me. However, just before Grace and I were about to leave, I decided to seek Janet out. She looked surprised when I approached her, interrupting a conversation she was having with a friend, and it was evident she was bracing herself for something uncomfortable. "Janet," I said, meeting her gaze and taking both of her hands in mine. "I must commend you on raising an extraordinary woman. Elizabeth truly stands alone. I have no doubt she could never have become the incredible person she is without your love and support as her mother. Best of luck to you." With that, I turned and walked over to Grace, leaving Janet utterly speechless. When I reached Grace, she remarked, "I think Betsy's mother wanted to say something to you." She was reaching out her hand as you walked away, and I think I saw her say, "Sorry." What could she be sorry about? "I'm not sure, sweetheart," I replied to Grace as I hurried her out of the ballroom. "Maybe she thinks I didn't like the wedding cake."